Hello everybody, good afternoon and welcome to the United Stand. Mason Mount injured, Luke Shaw set back, some players coming back, Erik Ten Hag facing the sack, but wants Ineos to back him. What a very, very good press conference that was. We've got so much to get into. Goldbridge is in his t-shirt and shorts because it's hot weather. He's feeling good, but if you're coming here for good news, I think it's a very mixed bag, to be honest with you, in relation to Manchester United and what is going on. We will fly straight into it. Mason Mount is injured again. I think this is injury 4. Also, I do detect that I mentioned this a week ago. Some of you would agree or disagree. I think we're in a position here where Manchester United are focusing on the FA Cup. I think there was a few hints in there that there are players that you probably could throw in if it was the last game. If the FA Cup was on Sunday, I think people like Martinez would be playing. But I think quite rightly, and we'll get into the detail of it, Ten Hag is now saying, look, I've got players that want to play in the FA Cup final and I've got to make sure that they're ready for the FA Cup final. And yes, Arsenal's a big game on Sunday, but we're not going to throw players into that willy-nilly, I suppose. But let's fly into it. 8 o'clock show tonight, by the way. Down the pub later. It'll be a good show. But Mason Mount injured again. Can I just say as well, we've got quite a lot to go through here. Some really good questions asked of Ten Hag today. He was asked a question about having no chance against Arsenal and didn't really, say that we do. He was asked about the FA Cup as well. Some really, really good questions. Obviously, Luckhurst came out with an absolute crap question, which we'll talk about in a minute. I mean, why? I don't know. But we won't dwell on the negative yet. Although we will, because we're going to talk about Mason Mount. So Mason Mount is injured again. A setback yesterday. Well, not a setback. He's got injured again yesterday. So Mason Mount is not playing at the weekend. And I think, look, there's two ways of looking about this with Mason Mount. You either say unbelievably bad luck in your first season at Manchester United, or we've made a mistake. We've made a massive mistake, and we've bought a player that we never should have bought. He's injury prone. He's made of glass, and all of that. But in fairness, before Man United bought Mason Mount, unless the medical department have missed something, I don't think you can blame fans. I mean, look, Beth's a big fan of Mason Mount. I don't think you can blame Ten Hag, who bought him. I mean, if you look at Mason Mount at Chelsea, there's no indication that he had masses of injuries. And he's not old. He's in his mid-20s. He played a lot of football for Chelsea. And he, form-wise, wasn't good for Chelsea last year, but injury-wise, not really. Previous years, not really. Comes to Man United, gets 4 injuries in one season. Now, I don't have the answers, but I think this sort of thing has to fall down onto medical. It has to fall down onto medical. Medical when we signed him, and medical over the last 12 months, which we know is a failing. We know our fitness department is not fit for purpose. I did a video about this about a month ago. If you look at United's 3 main people involved in fitness and conditioning, they came in, one of them came in probably about 10 years ago, and 2 of them came in the Ollie era. Like, these are not Ten Hag's people. These are certainly not Ineos people. And we have to accept, and I think there's a report or a rumour come out that Sir David Brailsford has basically said that United's fitness department and structure around that is not fit for purpose. Funnily enough, it's injured. I think you've got to look at that. D92 said that he did have 3 injuries last season. Well, I'll have a look at that now, D92, because I don't. What I'm trying to say there is that I don't detect with Mason Mount before we bought him. I don't remember anybody talking about he's injury prone. It was more about where he's going to fit in the team. But so last season would have been, so February 2023, he was out for 34 days with a pelvic contusion. And that sort of kept him out from the end, towards the end of last season. He had a pelvic problem. And then nothing else really. Had a little bit of a knock for 2 days in January. And then the last injury before that was an ankle injury a year before in 2022. So, yeah, he had a pelvic problem at the end of last season, and that was it. It was quite a significant one, but we don't think that's the problem with him now. So, look, I disagree. I don't think on the face of it, I or you or Ten Hag would know that Mason Mount had any problems. And I do think it's bad luck. I think it's indicative of the season in general. I really don't want to see people going mad at Mason Mount. Like, the injuries we've had this season runs way beyond Mason Mount. It's been a complete write-off. He was out of contract this summer. So you could look at that. But I don't think this is a stick to beat Ten Hag with. I don't think it's a stick to, beat yourself with if you think Mount was a good signing and it's been a complete and utter failure. I just think it's ridiculous that in his first year he's had 4 injuries. I mean, we may as well have not bought him. That's the bottom line. He's just not been available all season for Manchester United. And that is a very, very, very sad thing. What can we say about it? I don't know. I mean, I don't really see... how long is he out injured for now? He's certainly not going to go to the Euros. Would he start in the FA Cup final? Can he be back for the FA Cup final? Would he be in... I just think it's a write-off season for Mason Mount. And hopefully, a bit of rest and recuperation, he can hit pre-season and, have a better year next year. I bet we're going to get beaten by Arsenal, says Pessy. Did we sign Mount for the English quota, says Grace. Mount, we've spoken about that from D92. Some serious questions need to be asked of our medical and scouting teams, says Chiri. Well, they already are. They already are, aren't they? They already are. Where are we in relation to other injuries? So I don't expect anybody to be back apart from Bruno and McTominay and maybe Rashford. So Ten Hag has given an update on everybody. He said there's a lot of players who are really desperate to be involved for the FA Cup final. Luke Shaw, but Luke Shaw's had another setback, so it's not looking great for Luke Shaw. Remember, Luke Shaw wants to go to the Euros as well, though. So with Luke Shaw, will he make the FA Cup final? Will he make the Euros? So Luke Shaw's not back and has had a bit of a setback. Lindelof, Varane, Martinez, they're all trying to get back. Apparently, Martinez said to Ten Hag he wants to play on Sunday against Arsenal. Ten Hag has said no. I'm not rushing players back. I will never gamble on people's fitness, which I think is something that gets lost with Ten Hag, if we're being honest. I've heard people saying we rush players back and Ten Hag's to blame for that. I am very, very rarely negative towards Ten Hag. As you know, I want him to stay. But I do call him a laptop manager. I think he's always been a laptop manager. And what I mean by that is, you see it when a player comes back, he takes them off after 60 minutes. So people who say that Ten Hag rushes people back or risks them, he doesn't. Over the 2 years he's been here, at times he's been a bit frustrating when a player comes back. He'll instantly take them off at 60 minutes, even if they're playing well. So I don't think Ten Hag is a manager that rushes players back, and he's certainly not going to do it with Martinez, but Martinez desperate to play. So I think for the Arsenal game, Bruno Fernandes, Scott McTominay, and maybe Marcus Rashford will be back on Sunday, which means we're not going to see any difference to our back four. And that's the thing at the moment, isn't it? We're not going to see a difference to the back four, which is absolutely huge. And he was asked the question, I think this is probably one of the best questions, actually. He was asked a question about Louis van Gaal, and he said, Louis van Gaal won the FA Cup and was still sacked. Does it worry you that even if you win the FA Cup, you could still get the sack? And this was what Ten Hag said. He said, no, because I think these owners have got common sense. Big words. I think these owners have got common sense, and they'll see that the injuries that we've had, the fact that we've had no starting left back for most of the season, the many different combinations of centre backs we've had, the amount of players we've had, 32 different back fours this season so far. And he said, no team can perform with the amount of injuries that we've got. So, we're going to talk about it a little bit more tonight about what might be going on with Ten Hag's future. But obviously, this is breaking news, and I think it's an interesting thing to say. Look, no, I'm not worried about my future because I think these owners have got common sense. Now, common sense is lacking in football, and it's certainly lacking in football club ownership. But I think he's right. I do think he's right. I think whatever you think about the future of the manager, and that's your prerogative, that's your decision to make, there is a massive elephant in the room in relation to why we've been so shit this season. And we've just spent a few minutes talking about Mason Mount, and I think it's bad luck on Mason Mount, but he hasn't played all season. Martinez, our best, most influential defender, out all season. Luke Shaw, massive influence in that team, out for most of the season. Casemiro has had injuries and has also fell off a fucking cliff in relation to form. So he's basically been shit all season. I think there are, Rashford's been terrible all season. There are so many things that are mitigating circumstances that if you can solve those problems over the summer, then, the way I would put it as an analogy is, it's like having a Ferrari on your drive and it's not performed for you because it's got a few things you can fix. And as soon as you fix them, it's going to be a fast car. But you get rid of the Ferrari and trade it in for a Vauxhall Astra. It won't be a fast car. And I think some people might say, well, yeah, trading in Ten Hag for Southgate is like trading in a Ferrari for a Lamborghini. It's definitely not. It's definitely not. Trading in Ferrari Ten Hag for, Ferrari Tuchel, okay, yeah, I get that. But Tuchel comes with its own problems as well, and maybe that car will. So I don't see why the common sense thing wouldn't be appreciated, because I've said this before. I think next season we're going to have a good season. I think we'll have a good season with the new manager. I think we'll have an even better season if we stick with Ten Hag. But I think we'll have a good season next year. And nobody talks about this enough. It's impossible for Man United not to have a good season next year. It's an absolute open goal. Like, we are very, very close to 5th place. And we've been shit all year. Only a little bit of improvement. 10 more points, we'd be fighting with Villa for 4th place. So 4th place would be good for us, because we're not Liverpool, we're not Arsenal, and we're not Man City. I see Man United having a good season next season, because we can't replicate this. We can't replicate the off-field problems. We can't replicate the selling of the club halfway through a season. We can't replicate ignoring a January transfer window. We can't replicate not having a fucking left back all season. We can't replicate, the amount of players that just haven't played well. And we won't be able to replicate the amount of injuries. So there'll be improvement in all those areas, which will lead to more points. So I think next season we'll have a good season regardless. I don't think if Ten Hag gets sacked and manager comes in and we do better, I don't think it's going to be because of manager. I think there's naturally going to be a big improvement next season, which is one of the reasons I'd keep Ten Hag as well, because less disruption, we can finish that project and we can assess it in a year's time. So I think Ten Hag's right when he says that, I'm not worried about the sack after the FA Cup final, because I think the owners have got common sense and they'll see the problems that we've got. What else was he asked about? This was quite interesting. He says, look, he was asked 15 days to go to the FA Cup final. Is anybody out yet? Is there anybody that's not available for the FA Cup final? Because it's only 2 weeks away. 2 weeks tomorrow. And he said, at the moment, no one's out. Everybody's fighting to be available. There's some that it might be quite tight, but everybody's trying to get fit for that. And look, I hope most of them are, because if we've got most people back for that FA Cup final, then we'll be a much better team than the shit we're going to see on Sunday. And that's not an excuse for those players, but it's so hard to get the message through to those players at the moment. And Ten Hag was asked this question. He said, look, after Crystal Palace on Monday, some fans feel that you've got absolutely no chance against Arsenal on Sunday because they're such a good team. And Ten Hag said, look, Arsenal are a brilliant team. They're the best team in the league with Man City. Who's better, Man City or Arsenal? The bottom line is they're 2 of the best teams in the league. And we've got to play them in the next 2 weeks. Arsenal on Sunday and Man City in 2 weeks' time. They're a brilliant team. And he said, look, in relation to the no chance, he didn't sit there and say, wow, forget that, we've got no chance. What he actually said was probably one of the most honest things he's said in quite a while, but considering, some of the things he has been saying. He said, look, the fans see the problems. The fans see the problems in the defence. But they keep backing the team because they see the problems. And if we keep sticking together, we will come out of this. And some would say, well, that's quite a defeatist thing to say. But actually, I think it's a very truthful thing to say. I said it in the preview yesterday, no chance. I think we've got absolutely no chance of beating Arsenal on Sunday. But that's based on what I saw on Monday. And what I saw on Monday is youngsters like Rasmus and Mainu and Garnacho just getting lost under the pressure. And then senior players, Johnny Evans not fit, Eriksen, I don't know what his problem is. Wan-Bissaka looks like he's checked out. Casemiro is the captain, absolutely rubbish. So, you know, if we're going to play like that against Arsenal, it doesn't matter whether we've got home support and a good atmosphere, it won't be enough. If those players, the senior players, switch on and play as a team instead of flying into tackles on the halfway line and not picking up players, then Arsenal will pick us off. They'll pick us off easily. So I think Ten Hag's been quite honest there, and I think you're quite honest as well. I mean, if we play anything like we did against Crystal Palace on Monday, we will get beat. And I watched that Crystal Palace highlights this morning, actually. I don't know why I did it. I just did. I was a bit hungover, to be honest. And I watched that Rasmus on Henderson thing again. I watched it 10 times this morning. It's just not a foul every single time. They both go up for the same ball, and Henderson gets caught under Rasmus's arm. It's just not a foul. It's just not a foul. But look, by the by, that's nothing to do with anything. I was watching the goals we conceded, and every single one of them, it's just like, Palace deserve to win. They're better than us, yes. But I look at the first goal, like Wan-Bissaka not tracking his man, Casemiro jumping into a tackle when you're meant to be centre-back. It's almost like Casemiro's not Casemiro. It's almost like there's been a brain transplant or something. The goal where he's trying to shepherd it out for a goal kick and it gets cut back in and they score. Onana, not even mentioned Onana, getting done on his front post, getting done, you know, and Johnny Evans wasn't fit. So I watched that and I think if we play anything like that against Arsenal, we've got no chance. If we look, underdogs can win games. People will quite rightly say, well, look, yeah, we've got all the injuries, but we're still, you know, people still get results. Yeah, they do. But it's very hard to get results when certain players look like they don't care. And that's the problem. Anybody can beat anybody in this league, but Luton can beat Man City at Luton. They could, if they all play together and are compact. The problem we've got at the moment is you look at the goals that we're conceding. It's not that it's still 11 against 11. Arsenal are still way better than us, but our 11 players could get something out of the Arsenal game. We did against Liverpool. We've not been beat by Liverpool this season. We've beat Villa home and away. We can get results with these players, even with an injury crisis. But the reason it's all going wrong at the moment is because certain players have switched off. Certain players have switched off. They're not doing the basics. They're not at 100% mentally. They're not, you know, I'm centre-back, so I'm going to play like a centre-back. They're all wandering off here, there and everywhere. There's a drop-off in the attention. And Beth was talking about this morning. And, you know, the rumours that are coming out from the dressing room to journalists that players are giving up because they think Ten Hag is going to get sacked. Absolutely disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Players are giving up because they think the manager's going to get sacked. Who are you then? We're fans, exactly. So you're giving up because you think a manager's going to get sacked. Well, the fans aren't going anywhere. It's Manchester United still. Can't you just keep putting a fucking effort in? I mean, is 200 grand a week not enough for that? Like, so never forget that there are players on that pitch on Monday night and 2 years ago and most of this season who just don't put in the ability and dedication that we know that they have in them. Mount will come back strong next season, says the K-Stone. This season has been bad for Martinez, Malacia and Shaw, but deciding to single out Mason is unfair. I think this is a great point. Frustration will always lead to outbursts, as we know with me on Monday night. But I refuse to jump on the Mount negativity train. I think this has just been a really write-off season. I think it's a bad season. It's a bit like... It's like anything, isn't it? It's like giving Ten Hag another season. It's like a new signing like Mount having a bad first year. It's season 2 where it matters. And I think that next season's the season for Mason Mount, isn't it? It's very frustrating, though. No standing left back, but sent Reguilon back. Idiotic, says Jake. Yeah, you know, on Reguilon, by the way, I don't know whether anybody's ever known this, but Ten Hag didn't want Reguilon to go back. That was a financial decision that Manchester United made in August. We had the choice between Cucurella and Reguilon. And the reason they went for Reguilon was because Malacia was injured and they were hoping that Malacia would be back in January and therefore they could send Reguilon back and save money. That's why we didn't go for Cucurella. So we signed Reguilon fully intending and always going to send him back in January. It was always a 6 month. That's why we signed him over Cucurella, because Cucurella was a season one and Reguilon was a 5-month one. And Ten Hag was told by this fitness team that in January he would have 2 fit left backs. He had neither, and Reguilon had gone. That wasn't a managerial thing. It was a financial thing backed up by the medical team. So an absolute shambles. And that just evidences the problems that we've got. I love how no one talks about the Glazers, even though they're mostly at fault with how United is, says Pessy. There's a weird thing happened with the Glazers, you know. There's a weird thing happened with the Glazers. We've protested. We've glazered out. We've had games cancelled. There was a massive, massive frustration towards the Glazers. And it's completely been forgotten. They still own half this football club. They're still there, and nobody ever talks about them anymore, and I don't really understand it. This could also be what happens when you're trying to buy rich on a poor man's budget, says Andrew Rossi. I bet we're going to get beaten by Arsenal 6-0, says Pessy. Oh, you know, just going back to that, Mount and Rice comparison by Ten Hag was stupid, says Joe. Well, I'm just about to talk about that. But Sean Turner, legend, says, if you was Ten Hag, would you recall Sancho after he refused to apologise for the team? Why does he deserve to play a Champions League final? We have an FA Cup final coming up. We need to bench players. We need bench players. I mean, Sean, you've just took me away from what I was going to talk about, the Rice and Mount comparison, which I'll come back to. Look, this is something that people get very opinionated about Sancho. Some people are like, Starboy Sancho, bring him back in the summer. He's proven everybody wrong. And then some people are like, he refused to play for the club. I don't care about the manager thing. If you don't want to play for this football club, you don't want to play for me. And if you don't want to play for me, you can do one. And that's why a lot of people want Elise over Sancho. But a lot of people trying to create this Ten Hag versus Sancho thing. It's not just Ten Hag that Sancho has a problem with. And it's not just Ten Hag who has a problem with Sancho. It's way bigger than that. Like there are other people involved. So it's not just that Ten Hag gets sacked, Sancho comes back. It's not that simple. But if Man United were very vindictive, then they could do something like Sean said and say, we need you back for the FA Cup final. Don't care whether you apologise or not. But they won't do that because Sancho is in a good place in Dortmund, and that loan deal is something that they're going to honour, and quite rightly so. So look, yeah, you could get really bitter and twisted about it, but I wouldn't, Sean, and the club won't. And, you know, Sancho deserves to play in the Champions League final. That's the loan deal. Crack on. I don't think anyone's really got a problem with that. Ineos own 25%. How do the Glazers only own 50%, Mark? No hate, I'm just curious who the other 25% belong to. Shareholders, Ali. Shareholders. So, Mount and Rice comparison by Ten Hag was stupid, says Joe Wright. He didn't make the comparison, mate. So this, for me, was the worst question in the press conference, and it came from my favourite journalist, sarcasm, Luckhurst from the Manchester Evening News, who has had a horrific week, in my opinion, singling out Rasmus Højlund and Anthony Martial for stick he would never do for certain other players. But he basically came out with a question that is just a complete waste of time. So he said about Declan Rice, straight after Mason Mount had been spoken about, Declan Rice, do you regret not signing Declan Rice? Now, for a journalist, I can't believe he asked that question. Because, for one, Erik Ten Hag is not going to sit there and say, I regret signing Declan Rice because we're playing them on Sunday and it would undermine the players that he did sign. But as a journalist, I would have thought he would know the story around Declan Rice. The arrogance that we still keep getting about, we should have bought Harry Kane, we should have bought Declan Rice. Like, if you're going to be a journalist or you're going to be a pundit and you're going to sit on mainstream media and say Man United should have bought Harry Kane or Man United should have bought Declan Rice, why don't we say Man United should have bought Kylian Mbappe as well? Because the likelihood is about the same. We couldn't sign Harry Kane because Spurs wouldn't sell Harry Kane to an English club. End of conversation. So anyone saying we should have bought Harry Kane instead of Rasmus, or we should have bought Kane and Rasmus, we couldn't sign Harry Kane. And yet all season we've had people going, we should have bought Harry Kane. Well, we should have bought Vinicius Jr. as well. Like, the chances of it are the same. Now, with Declan Rice, do you regret not signing Declan Rice? At what point did we have £100 million to sign Declan Rice? Mason Mount cost 55. At what point did we have 100 million to sign Declan Rice? We never had 100 million to sign Declan Rice. We never had it. We never had that budget to do it. And also, on Declan Rice, he'd made his decision to go to Arsenal in January. Arsenal put the work in on Declan Rice and impressed Declan Rice, and he wanted to go to Arsenal. And also, maybe Declan Rice wanted to stay in London. So how can you ask a manager who's under extreme pressure with a major injury crisis, how can you sit there and go, do you regret not signing Declan Rice? As if it was that bloody simple. Arsenal spent £100 million on Declan Rice, and they had that deal basically done 4 months before the summer transfer window. So, yeah, it's incredible. As if we could have just signed Declan Rice. And you know what it is? It will be, in that journalist's head, a way to try and undermine this manager by going, you should have signed Declan Rice. It's fantasy land. It's absolutely fantasy land. We made a lot of mistakes in last summer transfer window. We definitely did. But getting Declan Rice was not one of them because we couldn't do it. It was never going to happen because another club in a much better position in London had the money and had the groundwork done. And maybe Ten Hag did want Declan Rice, but the problem is Erik Ten Hag doesn't drive down to London and do all the contract for Declan Rice. Arsenal had that deal done professionally with Edu and everybody else, and we had John Murta. So I just find it amazing when somebody asks a question of a manager and goes, do you regret not signing Declan Rice? And then you look at how that deal actually happened. Mad. What midfielders is Ten Hag targeting in the summer that are going to solve our chance creation issues, says United? Elise worries me. We don't need wingers first. I don't know, United. And also, let's not forget, you don't know whether Ten Hag's even going to be the manager. And even if he is the manager, Ten Hag will not be solely responsible for recruitment. This is the whole point of Barada. This is the whole point of Ashworth. This is the whole point of Wilcox. This is the whole point of Blanc. This summer transfer window is going to be a collective. And who they're going to sign, I don't know. I hope they've got some really out-of-the-box thinking involved. I know there was a story yesterday morning about João Neves, but that's £100 million. And much the same as Declan Rice. We haven't got... Look, the Declan Rice question can be compared to the João Neves question. Both would be brilliant for Man United, but where's the £100 million going to come from? It's not going to happen. Mark, isn't it disrespectful to Dortmund manager and other players that had bigger part to play in them reaching the Champions final over Sancho? Yes, of course it is, Amir. Yeah, you're right about that. And Rory says, the funny/depressing thing is that Rice costs less annually than Casemiro. We have pissed away so much. Hopefully Ineos can fix it, says Rory. And Ian Disbury says, do you think Ineos will make a statement signing given the investment and potential player sales? If so, which position? CDM would be my choice. I wouldn't rule out a João Neves statement signing. But if I'm being honest, it goes back to what Ten Hag said about these owners have got common sense. If I'm owning Man United, and most of you are owning Man United, and I know my budget's around 150 million quid, I'm not spending 100 million on anybody. I'm going to make that try and get me 6 or 7 players, which means you've got to have really good recruitment, you've got to have really good scouts, and you've got to have really intelligent people there. So what's the point in bringing in a Barada or an Ashworth or a Wilcox or a Blanc and then spending £100 million on one player? Anybody can do that. Anybody can spend £90 million on Pogba and 75 on Sancho and 80 on Maguire and 50 on Wan-Bissaka and 80 on Anthony and 60 on Casemiro. Anybody can do that. Any of you can pick Championship Manager or Football Manager up or FIFA and do that. We've got to stop doing that. There's no point in having a revolutionary hierarchy and structure if we're just going to keep spending obvious amounts of money on obvious signings. Like, we need to... If you want to sign a Harry Maguire, get Leicester down to 50 million. Don't give him 80. Don't give him 80 million. So I don't think they will make a massive signing. To be honest with you, there was something about the FA Cup I wanted to bring in, and I forget what it was. Oh yeah, he was asked the question: FA Cup or League? League game on Sunday, FA Cup in 2 weeks. What are your thoughts on that? And I do think I detect, and it's common sense that Ten Hag, he says, look, both games are important, but of course prioritise no big risks on Sunday. I can't make big risks on Sunday knowing that there are other games and a cup final to come. And I think we are starting to hit that sort of 2 weeks out now, where you're looking 2 weeks out to the FA Cup final, 2 weeks tomorrow. You know, Martinez wants to play on Sunday, and you prioritise the FA Cup final. I would do it. I'm sure most of you would do it. Martinez wants to play, but Ten Hag will be like, you've had 3 injuries this season. You're not quite ready to go in. I need you for the FA Cup final. So I think that, although he would never admit it, I think common sense prevails that we are actually prioritising the FA Cup final now. We probably could throw players in on Sunday, but you don't want them to be injured again. So, yeah, I think the FA Cup has to become the priority now. Apparently, Mount's injury is just a few days. Yeah, but a few days, few months, it doesn't really matter, does it? He won't be available on Sunday. And I think, look, that's frustrating. That's disappointing. I mean, it's good news that it's only a few days and not a few months, but it's still an injury that keeps him out of the game. It's still a break in the rhythm. He's still got to come back and get match sharpness again, which he didn't have anyway. So it's still massively frustrating and horrible luck. We have got an 8 o'clock show tonight. I'm also playing a bit of FIFA, my Man United career mode. I'm going for the title. You can tell it's a bloody fantasy. I'm meant to be at 3, but it's going to have to be 3:30 because I've got to go and pop something out. Pop something out? It's because I was looking at this bloody thing I've got on my leg. 3:30, 8 o'clock tonight. I'm going to play a bit of the EAFC, then I'm going to go down pub, and then I'll be back with you at 8 o'clock. The VAR thing, just very, very quickly. Michael Oliver is on VAR for the FA Cup final. I haven't had a chance to speak to you brilliant people since that came out. I mentioned it on That's Football on my video this morning, in the latter part of the video. This, to me, is just the arrogance, dictatorship of the officials and the people that run football, and how they don't care about you, they don't care about fans, and they do what they do in their little groups, their arrogant little groups. How on earth would you put Michael Oliver on the FA Cup final? Nobody's saying he's corrupt. Well, I'm not. But look at Michael Oliver this season. FA Cup semi-final, doesn't give an obvious handball for Chelsea. Man City end up winning. Manchester derby, he's on VAR. Anthony Taylor doesn't give a foul. He says, oh, look at that. Rasmus brushes Rodri, penalty. Onside goal given when it was offside for Man City against Fulham. Last minute penalty that would have changed the course of the title at Anfield, doesn't give the penalty. Numerous decisions this season involving Michael Oliver and Manchester City. Why would you put him in that game? Why would you have him in that game? Because if there's anything that goes wrong in that game, United fans are going to lose their shit. It reminds me of Everton Forest, when Forest said, we've got concerns about the guy on VAR being a Luton fan. Well, whether he's a Luton fan or not, just don't use him. And then if there's anything controversial, nobody can say anything. And this is the same. Like, why put Michael Oliver in that game? Because lots of United fans are just going to be thinking, he's had a horrific season around Man City. Why is he here? But they'll be going, he's the best referee in the country. Why shouldn't we put him there? Because you've got no bloody common sense. You're not, you're creating something you don't need to create. Has there been any update on Dan Ashworth? The only update I've had on Dan Ashworth is that it's getting closer. Closer than close. I don't know. I mean, considering we were getting Dan Ashworth at the end of January, and it's now the middle of May, I don't know. I don't know. But really, he's not going to have much of an impact on the summer transfer window, is he? Because he's not even there. Maguire staying, says not J7. Well, look, I don't know who's staying. I don't know who's going. I think we need to sell a lot of players, but we don't know who's going to stay and who's going to go, do we? Right, I've got to go and do a couple of things. But if you're going to join me for, I need a bit of like football where I might win. In a Man United shirt. So EAFC at 3:30. Join me for that. I forget, but I think we're around February time. We're still in the Champions League. I think we're top of the... It's my final season doing it, and it's Operation Win the Premier League. So join me for that at 3:30. 8 o'clock back on here tonight. Got some really... Don't miss the 8 o'clock show. All I'm going to tell you is the title is... Well, basically, it's a bit of a conspiracy theory, but there's a lot of evidence behind it, and it's something major at Manchester United, and we'll be exposing that and talking about it at 8 o'clock. Don't want to miss it. Mark, here's $5 for a half a pint, says Amir. What? Can I get a shout here for Amir? He knows I'm heading down the pub. He knows it's hot. And he's just done a super chat buying me a pint. I've never had... Well, I have. But I've never had it on a Friday when people know I'm going down the pub. So, Amir, cheers to you, mate. You're an absolute legend. And when I buy the first pint tonight, I'm going to go, Amir bought me that. It's actually more than $5, Amir, but I'll make up the rest. You're an absolute legend. Thank you. Also, one of our moderators, Renate, it's her last ever show tonight. She's been with us for years. She's amazing. She's a legend. I'm so sad that she's going. I know the moderators are as well. So it's Renate's last show tonight as a moderator. So really, really sad about that as well. So yeah, it'll be emotional tonight. But as I say, we've got a good reveal. Thanks, Amir, for that. If you want to get one of these t-shirts, by the way, they're so nice. They're like really like good material, like let it breathe. I think it's pinned, or you can go to United Stand Shopify. Loads of t-shirts you can get there. Take care, everyone. Speak to you all later.